Okay. All right, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the first ever edition of the Steelers Insider Podcast with Jim Wexell and myself, Jeremy Hritz. This is the pilot episode of the Steelers Insider Podcast. And Jim, good morning and welcome to our first ever show.
Good morning, Jeremy. You're doing a great job with this stuff. Keep it up.
Awesome. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today, and we're going to jump right in because I know that you have to be at practice today as the preseason moves forward. But we're going to spend some time talking about the contest against the Eagles this past Thursday, who really helped their case to make the 53-man roster, who maybe slipped up a little bit. And I think that's a good jumping off point for us this morning. So, based on the game, who really stood out to you as making a case for themselves for the 53? And who hurt themselves?
The 53, I haven't pared down the 53 yet. I'm not so interested in those bottom guys as I am the offensive line. And I thought Dan Moore really showed. And he was actually promoted in a weird way by being moved to right tackle at practice, which I believe, one, gives Chooks the starting job. Because as well as Dan Moore played, I thought he should challenge Chooks for the starting job at left tackle. But if you're going to move a rookie to right tackle out of his comfort zone when he's really rolling as a coach, that means you've promoted him to the number 3, and he's out of the running for the number 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And he struggled in practice at right tackle a bit. But Adrian Clem said he got better as the practice went on, and it's just a matter of time. And I thought he struggled at left tackle last spring. So this guy gets better quickly, at least at left tackle he did. So if he's going to be the swing tackle, General Joe Haig, he's not in charge of right tackle anymore, thankfully. I don't know the man. He is a backup, and now he's the number 4, in my opinion. Now, you could say that he's moved to left tackle to be the swing guy. I think it's more for Dan Moore. Dan Moore has to be the number 3, the first reserve at either side, the swing tackle. Kendrick Green played well. Kevin Dotson played well. He's now the first teamer at left guard. Kendrick Green, it sounds like they're giving him the job on opening day, which was a bit in question because that second line did play well the other night.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wondered if Hassenauer would take the first couple games, just as Kendrick Green still becomes accustomed. That's a difficult position for a rookie, especially a rookie who played guard in college.
Right.
But it sounds like Kendrick Green's going to be the starter, and the O-line now, Zach Banner was back at practice, so it's ready for cohesiveness, the cohesive drill. As far as, I thought Cody White, to get that 53, I thought Cody White kind of distinguished himself as the one true professional receiver among that second tier. But at practice, he came up lame. He was working late after practice. So instead of going off into the training room, he limped around on his last rep and limped off. And it looked like the hamstring was bothering him again. But Cody White looks like that guy. I don't know if Ulysses Gilbert played himself off the 53 by missing a tackle and generally playing soft, which is, I believe, was his negative trait coming out because he was so fast and he was still drafted, 5th round 3 years ago. He missed a couple years with back problems on and off. So I don't know, with the trade for Joe Schobert, I don't know if Ulysses Green will hang on to that job.
Right.
Those are some of the guys. If you have particular questions, I can answer them.
Yeah, I just kind of backpedaling a little bit here and talking about Dan Moore Jr. I know you said early on one of the concerns you had was with his ability to handle those speed rushers off the edge. Have you seen that improve in his game? And I guess what stands out as his primary strength at that tackle position?
Well, he, as far as it must be getting out of his stance is his weakness because he moves well. You see him out in front of screens. He moves well for a big man. So, and he did get better, working with Alex Highsmith every day. and then some Melvin Ingram will get you better.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen him get beat. Maybe a pressure or two, not no sacks. I haven't seen him get beat. So I'm not too concerned. I mean, it's going to get worse, and all great speed rushers on that side are difficult for everybody. Chooks
Right.
is going to have that problem.
Right.
When Moore moved to the right side, you could see that struggle to get out of his stance again. He'll seem to worked on it at left tackle. He'll work on it at right tackle.
Right. And then in terms of inside linebacker, I know during the game, as I was watching and taking my notes, it just seemed like that inability to cover the tight end kind of resurfaced its ugly head. And that's been a characteristic over the past few years. And then all of a sudden on Twitter, oh, trading for Joe Schobert. So he's going to upgrade that inside linebacker room. But looking at Robert Spillane and even Devin Bush, he struggled, with covering the tight end there. I know he's working back from injury. What was your perspective on the inside linebacker performance across the board for the team Thursday?
Yeah, well, Devin will be all right. Spillane, when they traded for Schobert, I initially thought that, geez, Schobert must have really slowed down since his days from the Browns. He signed that mega contract and they're already getting rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't get these opportunities to not have to deal with the signing bonus. So when they cut him, they won't have to deal with all of that what's the word the financial people use? They won't have to deal pro what?
Proration, is it prorate?
Yeah, prorated. Yeah. They won't have to deal with that. They could cut him in it. They could redo this contract right now and give him another bonus and get that cap number down. And he would be happy. But so, your immediate thought is, wow, how bad has he become for the Jacksonville team to do all that? And Urban Meyer has been in Ohio. Maybe he's watched Joe Schobert closely and doesn't like him. Yeah. Schobert was kind of the Cleveland fans were split on him. Some were really happy he was gone. Some called him Slowbert. But he did play so well against the Steelers, and a lot of Cleveland fans thought so. Tomlin's excited. TJ Watt's excited because they played at Wisconsin together. And he's only 27. I keep seeing he's 28. He turns 28 in November.
Right.
So this is just a real steal if he hasn't lost much. I'm understanding that Jacksonville has some good young linebackers, and with the new regime, they want to go in that direction. And they thought $7.3 million was too much for a salary, but they've got to pay that prorated bonus money.
Mm-hmm.
So, geez, anyway, it sounds like he's not gonna be the backup. But listening to Tomlin yesterday, he's gonna be the starter. Spillane's gonna be down. So this will be fun to watch.
Right. It almost reminds me of a few years ago, and I know it wasn't a trade, but whenever Cleveland cut Joe Hayden, it was like, oh my, we have to sign him. It almost has a similar feeling to that. And you're right. The way Kevin Colbert was able to get Schobert for next to nothing, and like you said, easily rework that contract, it seems like it's going to be a big win and much needed because the coverage has to improve there at the inside backers. You mentioned Alex Highsmith. He, again, while he didn't record a sack, showed pressure on the quarterback again. I think he's making strides there. I don't know if you watched closely Ingram's performance and if you had any takes on what he did Thursday night in his first action.
I didn't watch closely, but he didn't get there. And after the 2-3 practices he had last week, I assumed he was going to. I'll just rest with what he did in practice. I know he's got the athleticism. So I really didn't watch that closely, him. And I don't think he played that many reps, really.
Mm-hmm.
Jameer Jones was exciting again. The problem is we've seen these guys, ever since Harrison.
Yeah.
So all of the guys since Harrison have not become Harrison. So I'm gonna go a little easy on Jameer, but I loved him that first backs on backers drill and the outside linebackers tight ends drill. He was ragdolling some people. He's a natural brute.
Right.
And he's going to be great on special teams if he makes the team. So he's at least that. And he showed again that he can play against backups.
And Jim, looking at the outside linebacker room, I think the top three are pretty solid there. But for that fourth spot, is it going to be Cassius Marsh? Is it Quincy Crochet who sneaks in there? Could it be Jameer Jones? Or do they keep five? Has your perception changed on that?
Let it play out. And they could keep five if they're only going to keep four inside guys. And it always depends on the other positions too.
Mhm.
I don't know that there might be an over amount of number at the outside linebacker. So that may be the position they keep.
Okay.
And maybe a young defensive lineman. You've got the three starters, then you've got Loudermilk, then you've got Carlos Davis, and you've got Bugs. That's six I count making it, and they're playing Henry Mondo first team as a replacement. They're playing a lot of Mondo. There's Wormley too.
Right.
That's seven. Mondo's eight. So maybe they keep an extra defensive lineman. Maybe that's the spot. So that could take away from the linebackers, but it's all a gelling numbers puzzle. And I'll sort through it for the next podcast. I'll be much more zeroed in on the 53.
Got it. And just going through some of these other positive performances here, wanted to just talk about the running game. It seemed no matter who was in there at running back, they had a great output. And if it wasn't for two holding penalties when Najee carried for 8 yards and I think another was for 13, they both got called back. The calls were somewhat ticky-tack, but Jalen Samuels had a nice performance. I don't think it still helps his cause. McFarland seemed to do well. I guess your take on the running game from this past Thursday?
Oh, McFarland, you nailed it. McFarland looked much better. Looked like he can be the backup running back instead of just a niche player. And yeah, he's got that burst of speed and catch the ball. He's still a very small target and no catch radius, not much at all. But and Najee has to stop hurdling.
Yes.
Please stop hurdling.
I was
While
holding
it's cool.
Yeah.
And like I said last week, we've seen enough of Najee. We know what he can do. Let's get Benny Snell. Benny Snell was back at practice yesterday, so I don't know that he carried in scrimmage, but he was back working in competition periods and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, and you nailed it on Jalen Samuels. No need to go into that. I like Jalen, so I'm not. I wish him the best and I hope he picks it up. But somebody made a good point. The announcer said at one point, "Look at that hole for Jalen Samuels. He wasn't touched for 3 or 4 yards. It was a 4-yard gain."
Yeah, there you go. Tells you all you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
From a special teams perspective, Jordan Berry had a nice game punting. We didn't get to see Presley Harvin, but being that Berry performed as well as he did, is there a possibility that the team can move him for a 7th round pick, or do you think that he's just going to be cut whenever it's time?
Yeah, that's going to be hard to get a 7th round pick for the punter, but hey, maybe if he keeps punting like this, I like Jordan. He's a studious guy. This isn't Brad Wing. Brad Wing had a past of acting like a punter. They have that stereotype, and sometimes they live up to it.
Right.
Jordan came in carrying a notebook everywhere he went. What's a punter put in his notebook? But he carried one, very studious, always buttoned up, came from Australia. He ran a camp 5 or 6 years ago in which Perry Harvin was a camper, and he thought that was. And I asked Jordan, what do you think of Perry Harvin? He goes, he's a good bloke. End of the interview, I said, Jordan, you're a good bloke too, man. But the writing's on the wall.
Yeah. And then one last positive before we kind of take a look at some players who maybe didn't perform as well as expected. But finally, I think we saw the quarterback competition heat up a bit with Haskins going 16 of 22, 161 yards, that touchdown. He did have that play where it looked like he had no clue which direction he was supposed to go for. It looked like a bootleg. But I guess, did Haskins help his cause there for number 2, or do you think it's status quo, or where do you see this going?
If Rudolph would have fallen off, then maybe, but Rudolph was what, 8 for 9?
Yeah, he was pretty steady.
And that beautiful deep ball, he dropped it in the bucket to Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
He's going to be the quarterback, and yesterday he ran a 2-minute drill and stalled on the first 4 downs. It went off the field. Robert Spillane, he made Robert Spillane look good in coverage. Small joke. Robert Spillane broke up the 4th down pass. I don't know that he made him look good, but Mason's going to be the number 2. Haskins would have to do what he did against first teamers. We're going to have to see him. At least Rudolph has played against first teamers, and we see that 8 for 9. no points, but Haskins would have to, and there's just not going to be any time in that fourth game. Ben's going to get the start in the third game as usual. That's the dress rehearsal. And if they decide Ben needs more work, he'll start the fourth game. If not, maybe Haskins starts that, but he'll be going against second teamers and third teamers again. Nobody starts the first team in the fourth. Although this is a new setup for everybody. It's everyone else's third because they play one less game. Steelers had the Hall of Fame game. So they have 4 instead of 5 with the Hall of Fame game. So I just think it solidified his chance to become that number 1 next year. He may have crept up more on Mason next year than he did Mason this year, which is weird to explain, and I'm not going to try.
Yeah, it definitely was good to see just him take a step. And with all the hype going into that first contest, it was kind of underwhelming what we saw from both quarterbacks. But I would agree with you. There was across the board from both Mason and Haskins, they performed well. So I guess looking at maybe players who didn't play up to what would be expected, and I don't want to beat these guys up too hard because this is what camp is all about. It's what the preseason games are about, is getting better. So they're going to, have their bad performances. Talked about the inside linebacker position. I know one player who stood out to me, Cameron Sutton, seemed like he was out of position a lot Thursday night, missed a tackle, that 79-yard touchdown to Quez Watkins. That guy is fast. Unbelievable. We've seen Sutton be consistent in the past and play well. Hopefully this is an anomaly. But your take on Sutton than any other players that you felt really didn't have a great showing for themselves against the Eagles?
Sutton's cornerbacks are going to get beat, and I'm not too worried about Sutton. I thought Trey Norwood was more at fault at that on that big touchdown run, that screen, and also they threw into a blitz. The Steelers not only came with Ingram jumping inside, but they blitzed their nickel off the slot. So that left that whole thing wide open. Norwood took a bad angle and just had not enough speed. Nobody has enough speed for that guy.
No.
And so I didn't really look to Sutton. I assume he was just getting blocked, and cornerbacks do get blocked. I'm not too worried about Sutton. After him, Pierre does some good things, and then he gets beat. That's gonna be his problem. Mollett looks okay as the slot. I don't know that when's Brooks going to come back from injury? He wasn't back yesterday, so it looks like Mollett might grab that, and he's an NFL dude, as Tomlin said. So I think he's going to be serviceable there in Hilton's old spot. I'm not too down on Sutton, but don't get injured.
Yeah. And maybe maybe that's a position that Colbert works his magic for another August trade for some depth there, or we don't see that happening.
They traded their 4th, 5th, and 6th now from next year's draft. I know they're going to get a couple of those back in comp picks, and I guess if they cut General Haig, they get a 6th back.
Okay.
Or a 6th that they were going to lose, something like that. That's the conjecture. So maybe Chaz Green helped himself. He didn't play too bad. That could be the 4th tackle.
Okay.
But expecting to find another Hayden out there, and you're not going to get anybody worthy off the waiver wire at cornerback.
Right.
Maybe you get a few, but nobody. I don't think it's going to help this year. I just don't see them finding Joe Hayden again.
Right. Right. Well, that's where that pressure off the edge is going to be critical, because rush and coverage go together. They're really going to have to rely on, the pressure to cover up for, and it's not that the cornerbacks are bad. Hayden is getting older, yes, but he's still a very smart player. But I think with Sutton, he just hasn't had the time in that position as a starter to really settle in. So, like you said, it may be inconsistent at times, but that rush will help a lot. So, Jim, moving forward from the Eagles game, we have the Lions next Saturday, which it's at Heinz Field, which will be nice. First time that there's a game there with full setup of fans. Hopefully COVID doesn't, change that drastically in between now and then. But I guess following that Eagles game, what are you looking forward to the most? What do you want to see? Are there players who really need to step up this game and show out? I guess your take on this next contest versus the Lions.
Yeah, well, the O-line again, now we're starting to see them put the pieces back together. Turner had the day off, and Kendrick Green was given an excused absence for whatever reason, and Banner just came back. So it's time. Dotson was moved to, it was elevated. It's time to get some chemistry and then watch that chemistry go to work or begin the process in the dress rehearsal. I assume that's still their dress rehearsal.
Right.
Even though the number 4 preseason game is further away time wise from the opener than in past years, I believe there's an extra week now in there.
Okay.
I don't know why or how that works with the 17 game schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, August 27th, and then the opener is the September. Oh no, that's Ohio Bobcats at Eastern Kentucky. I'm sorry. The 12th. So yeah, there's an extra week in there. Did I mention the Bobcats are starting their season with my daughter as the starting goalie?
Oh wow, that's awesome. That's great. Is she is she a senior, junior, or?
She's a senior with 2 years eligibility left because of COVID and a red shirt.
Okay.
After this season, 2 more years. So
Awesome.
I don't know. She's worried more about her masters, I think, and that's good. But anyway, so there is an extra week. So the game 4 could be the dress rehearsal. And at least for the O-line, we'll get a lot more time in week 4 than maybe Ben or Najee or some of the guys you don't want to get hurt.
Right.
So that chemistry, that's the thing. And then Ben threw 3 picks yesterday in practice. Yeah, okay. I know the improved running game will help that, but a little bit of Ben coming up. I want to, see less picks, fewer picks.
Yeah.
And, TJ, let's get that rolling. But they have till September 12th on that. Gentry has now become more of a blocking tight end than a catching tight end, and that was always reversed. He might be their best blocker if Rader isn't on the 53.
I saw that you put on there that Gentry was a run game bully, either on Facebook or Twitter, that you had mentioned that. So
it was on Twitter. Yeah, that was a little surprising. He was doing a good job blocking. Doing a good job blocking. Awesome. But if this converted quarterback is now your best blocking tight end, how bad are the other 2? We saw Freiermuth's first attempt to block. He held and got called. But Freiermuth has some want to. I don't think you're going to. And Ebron, he did block somebody. He did block a defensive end. I think it was a first play. So, okay. All right. So I want to see the tight ends block again. Yeah.
Right.
All O-line related stuff. Yeah.
Right. Which, going into the season was the biggest question. So it definitely makes a lot of sense. We'll have to, as the year goes on, pay attention to the Ohio Bobcats and the soccer season and how they're doing. So maybe we could weave that into our weekly show. So we'll definitely be rooting for your daughter. All right. So one of the things that we're going to do here on our show, we're going to close every session with, we'll call it the Terrible 3 in honor of the Terrible Towel. I got 3 questions for you, Jim, to close out the show. You don't know where they're coming from, but the first one's going to be, what is your greatest Steelers preseason memory, if you even have one?
Wow. Greatest Steelers preseason memory. No, this is usually has to do with interviews. I don't know which Hall of Fame game it was at. And since I went to the Hall of Fame game, I went to Canton this year. I didn't go to the game. Me and Dale Lawley and Mike Pursuta were sitting in the press box clowning, just talking our gibberish that we usually do and jokes. And somebody turned around and said, you sound like the 3 sophomores. And I looked, I said, actually, it's the 4 freshmen. So I remember that. We weren't too welcome up there. I remember going down in 2007 and talking to Mike Tomlin about William Gay had a great Hall of Fame game, and so did Lamar Woodley. And they were rookies that year in 2007. It was my first interview with Tomlin after a game. How'd William Gay play? Because he had a pick and I think maybe a sack. What'd you think of William Gay? He goes, William Gay? He's just trying to survive. So, those are my memories. That's preseason stuff. I mean, I could try to think of a play. I remember Justin Lane's first preseason game was hideous. So when people say he's not making any progress, I don't know if you remember Justin Lane's first preseason game. So when people say he's not making progress, I mean, you would have to be just inert not to have made progress from that game. So Justin Lane has made progress. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but
Yeah.
I got no preseason memories. I don't.
Oh, hey, they were enjoyable what you shared there. So good stuff. The second one is again a lot of hype surrounding Alex Highsmith, how he's performed in the training camp practices, but also what he's done in the preseason games. Prediction on a sack total for Highsmith this year.
I'm going to say 8. I think that's conservative, a little juicy. I think it's a little lower than what people want me to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because then Ingram's going to be in there too. So 8, 7.5, 8, and of course TJ will be the man, and Ingram 6. And once Tuitt gets going, right in the middle of the line with Cam, you've got some pass rushers up there.
Yeah. Yep. Exciting. And then the last one of the terrible 3, the first ever terrible 3. You know, we've been talking about a lot of these players who've stood out in practices, in camp, but there's always that guy who, when the regular season starts, comes out of nowhere. Is there one player that you feel that is being ignored, not being talked about, that's going to come out of the woodwork and surprise everybody this year?
No, you know, those surprises, you're often forgotten about early preseason. And then in the 5th week, a guy like Pat Fryermuth starts shining all over the place, and everybody, all the national media would be like, look at this guy, what a surprise, where we all think very highly of him right now.
Right.
So I would say, I'm just going to say him, because if you go back, if you bookmark this and come back, you'll see what I mean. That's one guy. I don't want to say a guy like Jameer Jones. I mean, we're talking about bottom of the roster camp guys.
Yeah.
I think you want more. Terrell Edmonds, you know, I think he's just going to improve a little, which will be good enough. The D line, you know, Bugs flashes every now and then. You get this Bugs is a bum stuff that you hear around the grapevine. And he keeps making plays. And, you know, a guy like Dan Moore, you know, we're all raving about him now, but that's the kind of guy I think you're talking about, week 5 or 6, where the national media is saying, who's this guy? And we'll say, well, yeah, we all knew about him, but I'll say Dan Moore, and my other guy was, who did I say?
Pat Fryermuth?
Yes, Fryermuth, which is, I'm not going out on a limb with those two, but that's right. What I'm going to stick with.
All right. Well, hey, Jim, we did it. This was we wrapped up our first ever Steelers Insider podcast. Hopefully this is the start of many, many more, and great talking football with you here today. And we'll have this up on the Steel City Insider. We're going to try to do this weekly. I'm working on a specific YouTube page just for the podcast, and you know, make sure that you check out Jim's work at jimwexell.com. And your Twitter handle, Jim, is
at Jim Wexell.
Jim Wexell. So you can follow Jim at Jim Wexell. Make sure you do that. You can give me a follow at Still Study, and we will be back to you soon. But Jim, great talking football with you.
And if you want Sammy Wexell updates on the Ohio Bobcats, look on my Facebook page.
All right. Well,
I put football stuff there too.
There you go. So this is officially Steelers and Ohio Bobcats soccer. So we're going to make sure we follow the season. All right, everybody. We'll have a great week, and we will see you soon next time on the Steelers Insider podcast.